Before we begin, take a breath. This isn't just a podcast. It's a new way to think, speak, and live in English. Welcome to Confluent Podcast, where words flow, confidence grows, and every sip brings you closer to fluency. So think about the last time you promised yourself you were going to eat healthy.
Oh yeah, the classic struggle.
Right, like you were highly motivated, you had a plan, but then the second you felt stressed at work or maybe just incredibly bored on a Tuesday night, you just devoured a donut.
Yep, it happens to the best of us.
It's so frustrating. Why does a momentary bad mood seem to completely erase a lifetime of human intelligence?
Well, it really is the classic human dilemma, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what makes it so endlessly fascinating to me is that it happens even when you are armed with the absolute best information.
Yeah, you know the donut is bad.
Exactly. You don't suddenly forget that sugar is bad for you when you reach for it. Your IQ hasn't dropped. But in that specific micro moment, your emotional state completely hijacks and overpowers your intellect.
Which is incredibly annoying, honestly. We like to think of ourselves as these rational, logical creatures, but really we're just driven by how we feel.
Pretty much, yeah.
So looking at the research we've pulled together for today's deep dive, our mission here is to explore a radically simple, highly physical approach to managing that emotional state.
Right.
We're going to look at evidence suggesting that the absolute fastest way out of your head isn't through more thinking, it's actually through your body.
That's the core of it.
Mm-hmm.
We are basically going to flip the traditional script on how you solve your internal problems. But to get there, we first need to establish some foundational mechanics.
Right, because it's funny, we talk about feelings all the time. We say, I feel sad or I feel anxious.
Sure, constantly.
But if you asked me to actually define what a feeling is biologically, I'd probably just stare at you. Like, what is actually happening in the body when we experience an emotion?
It's a great question because we tend to think of an emotion as this, this singular, mysterious ghost in the machine.
Right, like it's magic.
Yeah. Exactly. But mechanically speaking, an emotion is fundamentally a two-part equation. It's a combination of a raw physical sensation, meaning an actual measurable energy, like a spike in heart rate or a vibration happening in your nervous system, paired with a very specific cognitive thought. The thought is just the label your brain attaches to that physical sensation to, try and make sense of it.
Okay, let's ground this with a real-world scenario from our notes. Let's talk about the heartbeat.
Perfect example.
Imagine you're sitting quietly in a chair, and suddenly you feel your heart start to beat much faster. Boom, boom, boom. Your chest tightens a bit, breathing gets a little shallower, and the overall energy in your physical body just sharply rises.
Yep, autonomic arousal.
Right. Now, if you're sitting there simultaneously imagining a great first date you're about to go on, you're picturing this wonderful person, visualizing the conversation, your brain takes that physical sensation, combines it with positive thoughts, and you label it excitement.
Exactly. You experience it as a highly positive state. But here's where the biology gets really interesting.
Okay.
Take that exact same physical sensation, the rapid heartbeat, the increased respiration, the exact same surge in your nervous system, and change the thought.
Ah, okay.
If you're instead sitting in that chair worrying, thinking, I'm not good looking enough, I don't make enough money, this date is going to be a total disaster, your brain takes that exact same physical energy and labels it nervousness or anxiety.
Wow. So the physical feeling in the body hasn't changed at all?
Not even a little bit.
Yeah.
The underlying biology is identical. Only the thoughts attached to it have shifted.
So it's almost like a battery, right?
That.
The physical energy surging in our body is really just raw fuel. It doesn't have a built-in direction. And our thoughts act as the steering wheel, deciding where that raw battery power actually goes.
That is a perfect way to look at it. The physical sensation is just energy, entirely devoid of meaning until your thoughts provide the direction.
So the battery provides the power, but your cognitive steering wheel decides whether you drive toward enthusiasm or crash into anxiety?
Which naturally leads us to a massive paradigm shift. If physical sensation is half of the emotional equation, what happens if we bypass the thoughts entirely?
Wait, you mean just ignoring the thoughts?
Sort of. What if we directly manipulate our physical bodies to change our minds?
This gets into some really popular motivational psychology. There's a core concept here in our sources that states emotion is created by motion.
Yes.
The idea is that just moving your body physically alters your body chemistry, which in turn literally changes your thoughts.
That's the premise.
But, I have to push back a little here. Does that mean Years of psychoanalysis, just, sitting on a couch and knowing why I have a problem doesn't actually fix it.
This is actually a major flaw in traditional talk therapy that a lot of modern behavioral psychologists point out.
Really?
Yeah. For decades, the mental health industry relied heavily on the belief that if you simply gain insight, like if you sit around and analyze your past to understand exactly why you have a fear of failure, you will automatically fix your behavior.
But that doesn't work.
Insight alone rarely changes behavior. Knowing is not the same as doing.
Because you can't outthink a physiological state of panic. Like, let's look at a couple of case studies we found.
Sure.
Imagine a young man who really wants to ask someone out. You can give him the perfect script. He can sit in his room and logically know exactly what words to say.
Yep.
But if his physical body is paralyzed by a lack of confidence, all that perfect strategy is completely useless. He's not going to do it. Or, if he tries, his nervous, stuttering state will completely undermine him.
Exactly. Or consider a highly qualified professional walking into a job interview. Logically, on paper, they are the absolute best person for the job.
Right.
They have the answers prepared.
Yeah.
But if their emotional state is weak, if they're just drowning in cortisol and their body is in a state of fear, they will bomb the interview. All the good strategy in the world completely fails if your emotional state is broken.
Okay, so if insight doesn't work, and we know that emotion is created by motion, how does moving actually fix this? Are we just talking about, like, smiling more? Because that sounds a little too simple to cure deep anxiety.
I know, it sounds overly simple, but the biological mechanism behind it is profound. It's often referred to as the facial feedback hypothesis, or proprioceptive feedback.
Okay, what does that mean in plain English?
When you physically move, you are pulling biological levers. Simply changing the muscles in your face to smile, or, pulling your shoulders back and lifting your head, sends an immediate physical signal through your nervous system to your brain.
Instantly.
Instantly. It begins to alter the neurochemistry, lowering stress hormones like cortisol and increasing neurotransmitters associated with confidence and well-being. You're literally rewiring how you feel inside by changing the outside.
So there is a direct physiological feedback loop from the muscles to the brain. Like, your brain is constantly checking in with your posture to figure out how it should be feeling. That makes sense. But if I'm sitting in a waiting room before a terrifying job interview, I can't exactly start doing jumping jacks.
No, probably not a good look.
Right. So how does this apply when you have to maintain some level of normal social behavior?
This is where we get into the art of intentional mimicry. People often summarize this as fake it till you make it,
Yeah.
but a better way to think about it is studying and adopting the physical blueprint of success.
So observing others?
Yeah. If you lack confidence in that waiting room, you don't need jumping jacks. You need to study what confident people do with their bodies and deliberately copy them.
You literally copy their posture,
That's
the way they
right.
take up space in a chair, the way they use their hands when they speak, how they maintain eye contact, or the slower, stronger resonance of their voice.
All of it.
But I have to imagine when you first start doing this, it feels incredibly awkward. You must feel like an actor on a stage just pretending to be brave.
Oh, you will absolutely feel like an imposter at first. It feels super weird. But the incredible thing about the human nervous system is that if you do this habitually, it stops being an act.
Really, it just becomes real.
Yeah, because you are consistently sending physical signals to your brain that you are safe, powerful, and in control, the brain eventually aligns its chemical output with the body's physical reality. It creates genuine biological confidence.
It's like wearing someone else's emotional suit. At first, it's baggy, it doesn't fit right, and you feel a little ridiculous walking around in it.
Right.
But you keep wearing it, and eventually it shrinks to fit you perfectly. It just becomes who you are.
That's a great way to visualize it. But we do have to address what happens when the stress is extreme.
Okay, like what?
What if you aren't just a little unconfident in a waiting room, but you're experiencing severe high-voltage nervousness? Public speaking is the classic example here.
Oh, man, yeah. Sweaty palms, shaking.
Exactly. When you're terrified of stepping on stage in front of 1,000 people, your body is completely flooded with adrenaline. The traditional advice everyone gives you in that moment is to calm down.
Right. Take a deep breath. Try to relax.
But that is terrible advice.
Wait, really? If I'm on the verge of a panic attack before public speaking, my instinct is absolutely not to hype myself up even more. That feels like throwing gasoline on a fire. Why wouldn't I just try to take deep breaths and calm down?
Because of the adrenaline. Trying to go from high-energy nervousness, where your heart is pounding at 140 beats a minute straight, to low energy calm in a matter of seconds is biologically impossible.
Impossible.
Biologically, yes. You have massive amounts of stress hormones coursing through your veins. You can't just flip a switch and be zen.
Right. It's like trying to slam your car into reverse while you're driving 80 miles an hour down the highway.
That's a perfect analogy.
You aren't going to go backward. You're just going to completely destroy the transmission.
Exactly. You cannot fight that level of physiological arousal by sitting still. So instead of fighting the high energy, you have to convert it.
Convert it.
You take that high energy negative state, the terror, and you physically translate it into a high energy positive state, which is excitement.
This is wild. So instead of sitting quietly trying to force your heart to slow down, you actually lean into the energy.
You lean all the way in.
You jump around backstage, you smile aggressively, you physically hype yourself up, throwing your arms in the air.
Exactly.
You're essentially taking that raw battery power we talked about earlier, and instead of letting it fuel a panic attack, you grab the steering wheel and violently jerk it toward absolute enthusiasm. You keep the speed, but you change the direction.
It's a masterful use of human physiology because you're burning off the same stress hormones but framing them positively.
It makes so much sense.
But if we pull back and look at the bigger picture here, this raises a necessary question. We're talking a lot about changing, managing, or escaping negative emotions. But are we supposed to completely eliminate them? Is the goal to just be aggressively happy and confident 100% of the time?
Yeah, that sounds exhausting and honestly a little toxic. Like, are we
Yeah.
trying to become emotionless robots who just smile through every disaster?
Not at all. And the research is very clear on this point. You cannot and absolutely should not try to get rid of all negative emotions.
Okay, good.
The objective is managing them, not erasing them.
Mm.
Negative emotions evolve for a very specific reason.
Yeah.
They have immense survival utility.
There's a really interesting anecdote we looked at regarding this. A mother was talking about her 3-year-old child who was incredibly social and constantly walking up to unknown adults to strike up conversation.
Right, a classic parenting worry.
Yeah, the mother was feeling highly nervous and anxious about this behavior. But in that specific context, her nervousness is actually a good, healthy instinct.
Absolutely.
It's the protective alarm bell of the amygdala doing exactly what it's supposed to do, keeping her child safe from potential danger.
Right. It's just like a fear of heights. If you're standing on the edge of a literal cliff, that physical dread in your stomach is exactly what keeps you from stepping off and dying. You don't want to pause to think your way out of a biological survival instinct.
But, and I think this is the crucial part, how often in our modern lives are we actually standing on the edge of a cliff?
And that is the crux of the issue. The danger isn't the emotion itself, it's the misapplication of it.
Because we panic over email.
Exactly. It's estimated that 99% of the bad things we imagine and worry about will never actually happen. We are constantly triggering that cliff edge panic response over imaginary scenarios, like an email from a boss or a slightly awkward social interaction.
Wait, waste so much energy.
Massive amounts of biological energy. We worry about things from a year ago that today we have completely forgotten about. All that worry was biologically taxing and entirely useless.
So it's about distinguishing between a useful signal and useless noise, which leads to one of the most fascinating philosophical questions in all of this.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
Think about this. If you can observe your thoughts, and if you can actively choose to control your emotions by changing your posture, then who is doing the controlling?
It's a profound shift in perspective, isn't it?
It really is.
If you can step back in a moment of stress and say, I am feeling angry right now, but I choose to change my posture to alter that anger, then you are inherently not the anger itself. You are the observer.
You're separate from it.
Exactly. In psychology, this is often related to cognitive diffusion, separating your core identity from the temporary chemical spikes in your brain.
Right.
Some traditions call this the higher consciousness, the true self, or the observer. This higher self watches, analyzes, and manages the temporary weather of our emotions.
I really love that weather metaphor. It sounds a bit spiritual at first, but functionally it makes perfect sense.
It does.
You wouldn't stand outside in a storm and say, I am the rain. You say, it is raining right now and I'm going to grab an umbrella. The rain eventually passes, your emotions pass. You are the sky, not the clouds.
And realizing that you are the observer gives you the ultimate leverage. It detaches your identity from the temporary physical sensations in your body so you don't feel like a victim to whatever mood strikes you.
Okay, so we've established that physical movement is the most immediate, powerful tool to change the weather. We can mimic confident posture, or we can jump around to convert panic into excitement.
Yes.
But what other levers can we pull to manage our state? Let's say you're in a situation where you're stuck in a chair feeling that useless noise, and you can't exactly start power posing or doing jumping jacks.
Language.
Oh, okay.
The specific vocabulary we use acts as a highly effective secondary steering wheel for our physiology.
The vocabulary trick. This is so subtle but so powerful. Let's say your family completely forgets your birthday.
That would sting.
Yeah, you have every right to be bothered by that. But how you describe it out loud or even just in your own head dictates the physical intensity of the emotion.
That's right.
If you say, I am super angry, the mere use of the word angry paired with the amplifier super triggers a semantic network in your brain that actually intensifies the chemical release in your body. You physically make the emotion stronger by naming it that way.
Conversely, if you make a conscious choice to say, I'm a little upset, you are still acknowledging the feeling. You aren't sweeping it under the rug or pretending everything is fine.
Right, you're not in denial.
But the phrase, a little upset, carries a much lower vibrational frequency. It signals to your brain that the threat level is low, which physically brings the emotional intensity down to a manageable level.
It's like having an emotional volume control knob right in your vocabulary.
Exactly.
And if you pair that with other internal tools like deep intentional breathing to stimulate the vagus nerve and calm the nervous system, or just the old advice of counting to 10 to force the logical prefrontal cortex to engage and interrupt the emotional flood, you have a lot of control.
You really do.
Even just visualizing a calm beach uses the brain's visual center to trigger a relaxation response in the body.
You have a whole array of tools.
Yeah.
But knowing the tools and using them are two different things, right?
Oh, for sure. Execution is the hard part.
Deciding you're going to be perfectly emotionally disciplined forever is an incredibly intimidating thought, which is why habit building is the final piece of the puzzle.
Right, because let's be honest, the human brain struggles with the concept of permanence. If I tell myself I have to have perfect posture and perfect emotional vocabulary every day for the rest of my life, I'm going to quit by tomorrow afternoon.
Exactly. It creates immense psychological resistance. Instead, you have to shrink the timeline. Do not think about forever.
Just focus on doing it for 20 to 30 days. That's it.
Yep.
Just tell yourself, I'm going to consciously stand with my shoulders back and my head up for the next 30 days. That feels entirely doable. It feels like a fun experiment.
And the beauty is, by the time those 30 days are up, your neurochemistry has already started to wire it in as a default setting.
It's all about pacing yourself, making small, manageable, incremental steps rather than attempting dramatic, unsustainable overhauls of your entire personality.
Exactly.
It reminds me of an analogy we came across regarding a minor knee injury in jiu-jitsu. The ego-driven instinct might be to aggressively push through the pain to prove how tough you are, or because you think you have to train perfectly forever without stopping.
Which usually ends badly.
Right. But taking a short, smart 1-month break allows the knee to actually heal. It prevents a massive, catastrophic injury that would require surgery and take you out for a year. Managing your emotional habits is exactly the same. Taking small, smart, manageable steps always wins over brute force.
Because true mastery isn't about being invincible or emotionless. It's about knowing when to push, when to rest, and how to intelligently direct your physical and mental resources. That is what self-mastery actually looks like.
Which brings us perfectly to the end of our deep dive today. Let's recap what we've unpacked. First and foremost, you are not a victim of your emotions.
Absolutely not.
You are the observer, the higher self, managing the weather of your nervous system. And you have an actual physical toolkit at your disposal. If you're stressed, you can actively copy the posture and breathing of a relaxed person to decompress your biology.
Yep.
If you're terrified before a presentation, you don't have to slam on the brakes. You can jump around and convert that terror into high-voltage excitement. And if you're angry, you can literally turn down the heat in your body just by changing the words you use from furious to bothered.
And I think it's vital to remember why this matters for you, the listener. This isn't just about feeling good or being happy all the time.
No, it's bigger than that.
It's about ensuring that your hard-earned intelligence, your careful strategies, and your actual potential are never hijacked by a temporary bad mood or a useless spike of anxiety. It is about becoming the absolute master of your own internal state.
Exactly. You hold the steering wheel. The battery is just fuel. So I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today as you go about your routine.
Ooh. Right?
If every physical movement you make is secretly programming your mind, what is your default everyday resting posture telling your brain right now? Take a moment, check your shoulders. Are they slumped forward? Is your jaw tight? Notice it. And then see what happens to your mind when you change them.